Okay, I'm going to call our regular Board of Education meeting to order. If we could all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. There's a flag behind me. I pledge allegiance
to the
flag
of the
of the
United
States of
America,
and to the
and to the
republic for
republic
which it
for which it
stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible, with liberty and
liberty and
justice
justice
for
for
all.
all.
Okay, next, our mission statement. Chris?
Right, at Richmond Community Schools, we provide a quality education that empowers students to be successful in a global community. I'll go ahead and do roll call. Margaret?
Here.
Jessica?
Here.
Kyle?
Here.
Sandy?
Here.
Angie?
Here.
Sherry?
Here.
We are all here.
Thank you. Next, a motion would be in order to approve the agenda as presented.
I
So
motion to
moved.
approve the agenda as presented.
Support.
Sherry, was that you?
I supported, yes.
It has been moved and supported. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Or
It's been moved and supported. Any discussion? Mr. Walmsley?
Hey, on the personnel report, there were some updates that came in today. We received some resignations for some early childhood positions, and there were 2 teacher resignations for personal reasons, and one, so we have Mrs. Ottenbacher, Laura Ottenbacher, Wendy Machowski, Courtney Labish, and Haley Lanu from the early childhood program, Andrea Kanya from middle school teacher, and Kate Volpe, high school teacher, resigned. We do have new hires. We have Bridget Thompson, who is an assistant cook and driver at the Richmond Middle School, and I don't believe Bridget is there. We have Melissa Mayo, secretary for the Richmond Middle School. She replaced a retiring employee. And then we have Kimberly Elms, who is on here. I think she is the only one that's here. So Kimberly, if you want to unmute yourself and say hello to the board. She is the new administrative assistant to the
Good
superintendent.
evening. Good evening, everyone. I am excited to be here. It's a pleasure to meet each and every one of you. Looking forward to working with you.
likewise.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Welcome. It will be nice to meet you in person at some point.
Likewise.
Awesome.
Thank you.
You bet. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to say?
I wanted to ask, are there any common reasons why the early childhood had this exit or of this number?
There's quite a few that expressed COVID-19 as a concern, being in person in the letters that they sent us. There were some that there was health issues among their family. So they were, again, concerned with COVID-19 and the uncertainty of being back in school and the concern that that might have with their family. So it is definitely a concern, I would probably say, on all of our staff's minds. It's not on, I mean, it's a sad loss, and all of these I have basically said, if you change your mind, please come see me, because they are very, they're excellent staff members who we're going to want to see if we can get back, but a lot of personal reasons for COVID-19.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. With that being said, all those in favor, aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you and welcome to everyone, and best of luck to all that are leaving us. Next, our bond update, Mr. Walmsley.
If you've driven by I'll start with the football field. It's 99% finished. There's a couple punch list items that we are still working on, but it looks beautiful. And I can't thank the voters enough, because when we do get to play on the field, the the coaches and students will be very much appreciative of it. The elementary, if you have driven by lately, you'll see the fencing and the site work has started. They will be basically shutting down for 2 weeks, next week and the first week of school, so we can address, you know, all the hustle and bustle of staff and our technology distribution nights, as well as the first week of school, which is can be perceived as pretty chaotic with the number of cars that we typically have in the parking lot. So we were trying to minimize the construction workers, but they will go back in full force September 14th, where they'll start laying the foundation and the brick addition. We had the inspection done by the state fire marshal for the temporary egress that were put in at the elementary school. Everything's good to go on that aspect. We built a temporary walkway where I want to thank Miller Contracting across the street, who donated the cement blocks, the 2-ton blocks that we basically took a lane out in the road by Lee to be able to create a walkway from the front parking lot where parents typically park to the back of the building where kids will be entering. There's fencing up to protect them and so forth. So I think they're well underway. Tomorrow we meet regarding the project and the site work conditions. They are still finalizing the middle school and high school drawings. They're probably, I would say, about 90% ready. So I imagine at the next board meeting, I'll be bringing to you the concepts that we're looking at, that the pricing that OC does to have it within the budget that we plan for the bond. So we are moving ahead. Next summer will be, all 3 buildings will be tore up in the interiors of the building. All the interior stuff will be done next summer. So a bulk of the work will be done next summer. That's it.
Okay.
Brian, I have a question. What do you have in place with traffic around Lee? Because even on a normal day without construction happening, there's a lot of traffic and issues. So how much worse do you think that'll get?
I anticipate, even without construction, I'm anticipating more families driving their students rather than placing them on buses, just by some of the comments that we've had and hearing some of the conversation among parents. The temporary walkway, as you see, as you've driven by, takes a lane. I believe that's going to help slow down traffic so that we don't have as much traffic flying with it, but I'm anticipating parking lots to be full at capacity. We have asked any of the construction workers to park in a grassy area that will be actually the new road area when all the roads and sidewalks are done, to alleviate any of them taking parking spots in the parking lot. So we've also asked them to, when possible, start after the start of school to alleviate, again, congestion. That's not always possible depending on the schedules of construction workers and so forth, but we are trying to minimize that. But I do anticipate more cars in that area. And just reminding people to please drive slow and stop at the stop sign and watch for students and families. I think that those barricades will help slow that traffic down there. And I just encourage people to bring their patience, because we obviously don't want anybody getting hurt. So.
Right. Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Anybody else?
I wonder if we can encourage people to park over at the middle school and walk over. Put some signs up or something to redirect that there's still more parking down there. It's a farther walk, but the first day of school drop off is going to be crazy.
Yeah, let me, I know Mr. Castle sent me his welcome back letter that's going to go back, and Mr. Koshin and Mr. Bartel. So I'll talk to Mr. Koshin about adding that in the letter that goes out this week to families, because it would help with some of the traffic that we have.
We good?
Yep. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Going to move on to our presentation, the 2020-2020 Student Parent Handbook. Mr. Castle?
Cass, give me a second just to share the screen. So if you give me just 1 second.
Sure, we'll do a sound check. Am I live? You can hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Well, while Mr. Walmsley pulls that up, I'll kind of explain. What we did is we've gone through and we've made several changes to the student parent handbook. They're going to be highlighted in yellow, I believe, when Mr. Walmsley is able to share his screen here. So we'll just wait for him to be able to pull this up.
You'll be able to see the handbook.
Are we okay to go on your end, Mr. Walmsley?
Yep, everybody should be able to see the handbook at this time, and we can go.
Yes, we can.
All right, perfect. I'll kind of go through this as Mr. Walmsley's flipping through it. On page 1, obviously, the changes are just referring to the date of the handbook, and there's nothing more than just the simple change of the date. On page 2 there, it's just switching out of some of the names of the different positions of the Board of Education, the central office staff, and then the different staff at the schools. So that's all you have on page 2. The next big change, I believe, is on page 8, as we'll get there. In page 8, we had to add, and you'll see this is a common theme throughout the handbook this year, add verbiage for the COVID-19 protocols and procedures. So on page 8, there's just some verbiage talking about how in order to meet the district plan, we have to apply all the COVID-19 procedures and policies to anyone coming in the building and district transportation. The next one, I believe, is page 14. On page 14, there's just a simple strike through of a title of a position. And instead of Director of Curriculum and Educational Services, all those questions will now go, additions will go to the superintendent or designee. And then if you're looking down at scheduling an assignment, number 2, it's just some language talking about if students electing to change from in-person to virtual or from virtual back to in-person must submit a completed virtual online learning agreement to the community liaison, Power School, and pupil accounting coordinator. And that verbiage addition is just due to the fact that we've never had to deal with switching back and forth from in-person to virtual like this. The next change
Mr.
is on
Castle,
page.
just quickly on that virtual agreement, that is required for pupil accounting rules that we have a sign off from parents that they are agreeing to a virtual learning. So that's why we have to have that form in order to move them from in-person to virtual.
Correct.
And that form, everyone is getting that in a parent packet? How are they accessing that?
It was mailed to every student that was registered in Power School as of last week. I want to say Monday when the labels were made, along with my letter. It went in the U.S. mail. I believe it went out some on Tuesday, and the rest were picked up on Wednesday, so parents should have received them. A copy of that letter is also on the website and the form, but as parents are asking, we've been either emailing them the form or getting them the copy of the form again. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think we need to strike the word "the" in there. It's not grammatically correct as a sentence. Like, it just doesn't read well. So maybe take a peek at that.
Page 14, okay.
Okay. The next change is on page 21, at the very bottom of page 21. And it says, as outlined in the district's COVID-19 preparedness and response plan, approved by the Board of Education, visitors and volunteers are prohibited from entering the buildings unless there are extenuating circumstances. And that's going to be applied at all 3 of the buildings, just really limiting any visitors or anybody who doesn't have very, very important business in the building during the day, so that we're limiting the contact that we have. I believe the next one is on page 33. And in here, it's talking about the community service requirements. And the community service requirements, we ran into a little bit of a hitch at the end of last year with the service and the requirements and the ability for our students to get out and safely perform those community service. And again, this year, so what we've done is taken the community service hours and prorated them so that the students have a proration of the amount of hours that they have to have, and they're not going out and putting themselves in harm's way trying to get these community service hours. And then also you'll see that the community service, in order to get a community service cord for graduation, not only do you have to meet the required 40 hours or the prorated 40 hours, but you would have to get 60 hours in the future. So you'd have to go above and beyond to be able to get that cord to be recognized as performing those community service hours. And then for the, oh, sorry, was there a question?
No, so, I mean, that was I think if everyone remembers at graduation, that was a conversation that we had as board members. So it's not, it has to be an above and beyond is what you're saying, not just everybody gets one.
Correct, yeah. And again, it's kind of a little bit odd because in a normal year, you'd have to have the 40 years or the 40 hours through your 4 years. But because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we're having to adjust that to keep our students and our community safe. So once we do get up to that point where our students can get that 40, in order to get that cord, they have to go above and beyond that extra 20 hours. And then for the senior convocation, in order to get that recognition in those cords, we're adding that you have to have at least 2 credits within that that area. So for example, in order to get a cord for art or to get a cord for English, you would have to take 2 full credits and achieve that GPA of the 3.3 or higher.
So historically, they only needed to take maybe one class, and if they had that 3.3, they would get one?
That's correct.
Okay, that's how I understood it.
And that was a conversation we had last year because it didn't say the number of classes. So when you look at just what was in black and white, I don't think that was ever the original intent, but we tried to clean it up so that it was very clear you had more than just one class. It was a course.
Yep. And then on page 34 at the very top, they're just adding the robotics. The cord for robotics is going to be the Carolina blue and white. And in order to get that, you have to have completed 4 years in the high school program. So we cleaned up some of the language there, adding the Carolina blue and white for the cord and requiring the 4 years of the robotics participation. I believe the next one is on page 42. And again, on page 42, we're just adding some verbiage referring to the COVID-19 quarantine, talking about non-chargeable offenses and non-chargeable absences, and adding COVID-19 quarantine to that. So if you're quarantined due to contact or possible contact to COVID-19, that would be a non-chargeable offense. Going on to page 43.
Wait, hold it, Mr. Castle. Just,
Yes.
and we're doing that because of the COVID, that makes our attendance different, but it goes along the line with what the state's saying we can do as well, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So what we're going for is we don't want to have any sort of negative repercussions for requiring our students to follow the health policies.
Okay.
Yeah, part of this as a board is, remember, there may be cases that we have to quarantine part of a class, a whole class, because of an exposure as we do that contact tracing. So we still want them, if possible, assuming they're asymptomatic, and to participate in virtually while they're quarantined. But if for some reason they're symptomatic because of a connection to a school or a contact in a school, we don't want this to be counted against them as the overall course.
Right. The next change is on page 43 at the very bottom. And this is just applying to our dress code expectations to our virtual and online learners. So the dress code would apply to all students that are appearing on camera from home. On page 44.
I had a quick question. Oh, go ahead. It's not actually on page 44. Go ahead. It's about hats.
Oh, okay. Sure. I'll get through it. Sorry. And then if you have a question, go ahead and stop me. Okay, Chris?
Sure.
Okay. On 44, it's referring to Number 4 says COVID-19 facial coverings are required to be worn as outlined by the district's preparedness and response plan, and adding language in there that the administration at each building has the right to determine the appropriateness of the facial coverings and how they're worn and in the manner in which they're worn. Number 8 is making an exception to outside clothing in the classrooms, and we're making the exception for we're making the windows are allowed to be open, the doors are allowed to be open to get that airflow through the building, and that extra clothing certainly won't be needed here on days like this. But as we move farther into the cooler temperatures, on days when the windows are open and the temperature may be a little bit chilly outside, we're permitting the students to wear those sweatshirts and maybe those light jackets while they're in the classroom to accommodate the weather and the air movement. There's verbiage in number 12 there, just adding the word cubby for the elementary schools with the lockers there. The backpacks and are permitted only in the lockers / cubbies, so it's just an addition at that point. Did you have that question now, Mrs. Furtaw?
Yeah, it's a little bit different. I had somebody actually approach me and ask me a question about the dress code. I said that we were covering it this evening, and it was that their child was going to wear a hat that had a visor on it.
Oh, so you're talking about
Like
some
a
of the
face
facial
shield?
coverings that clip
Yeah.
on in the hat?
Would that be counted as a face shield, or would that be counted as a hat?
No, we've had multiple discussions on this
Okay.
in our administrative meetings, and I got to be real honest with you. We've had so many conversations referring to this that I don't know exactly what our discussion has been. Mr. Walmsley, do you remember exactly what the outcome with that was? And if you don't, that's fine. I'll make sure I get back to you on that, Mrs. Furtaw.
I just wanted to be clear for those parents that might be investing in that, something that's a little bit different for their student.
I don't remember the specifics, but I can say this from a collective group. Our goal is that kids are wearing a mask or face shield when they have to at all times, depending on the grade level. And if there's a situation that a student has a face shield that fits them and comfortable and they'll keep it on, we want to try to encourage that, because now it's less of a battle for the safety mechanism than just
Right.
the situation. But I will meet with the administrative group and we will clarify that, because the policy does allow us to, like on the first one, to determine the appropriateness of it. If that's something that as a collective group that we don't see as an issue, as long as it's part of a face shield, we have the policy that allows us to do that. We would just have to send out clarification to families to make sure that if they're sending a child that it's okay or not. So I will definitely follow up with the administrative team tomorrow, and then clarify that with the board, and then ultimately the community.
I appreciate that.
Mr.
Yeah.
Walmsley?
Yeah.
Okay, if I could add something real quick. With that discussion, we have mentioned that there are some face shields that can attach to a hat. So some students may wear a hat with a face shield attached to it. So we want to make sure that the verbiage, the language states that they can wear hats if it's part of a mechanism that includes a face shield.
And that's what I vaguely remember. I just didn't have my notes in front of me that we had the conversation, because ultimately we're trying to get students to wear the face shield or wear a mask. And if they want to wear the mask that has, I don't know, their favorite college on it rather than the one we give them, if they're going to wear it, it doesn't matter to us. And the same thing as Mr. Koshin said on the hat, if they're going to wear that shield, that was the conversation. So thank you, Mr. Koshin.
Yeah, and I do remember the conversation with those people like glasses, and I can definitely sympathize with them. That prevents a lot of the fogging up and a lot of the issues with fogging up. So,
So then does that mean then number 3, where it says hats, headwear, hoods are not to be worn, confiscated, comma, with the exception of if a hat is worn in conjunction with a face shield, it's okay? If that's what you're saying, that's what should be put in there. Right? Isn't that what you guys are saying?
Yes.
I liked Mr. Koshin's wording on that.
Let me amend that with Mr. Koshin tomorrow with his wording, and then discuss it with the principals to make sure we're all clear on that. But that is the intent. Just wearing a hat is not forbidden unless it's today's hat day for Spirit Week or so forth. But if the hat has some type of visor attached, or a face shield, that was something different.
Okay, so we're going to be approving this in a little bit. So the idea that you guys are saying is that something's going to be put in that number 3 that talks about hats can be worn if it's with a face shield. So when we approve it in a little bit, we know that's going to be added in there.
So we can reference in the resolution with the amendment to number 3 on page 44.
Okay,
If we remember that we said that it has to be, if it's going to be a hat with a face shield, that it has to be administratively approved, because I mean, teaching and working in the middle school, we'll have a kid come in with a fireman's hat on.
okay.
You know? So they have to, and so if it's not specifically made for it, then we would have the ability to approve it.
So then are you
Approve
saying
what
you don't want to add that to it? You want to leave it to, if it's a hat that is supposed to have a face shield, it's up to administrate? I get what you're saying, but
Number 4 allows the administration has the right to determine the appropriate. So if we add number 4, hat with face shield, then we look at number 4, which talks about a facial covering, and if it's not appropriate for that situation, we have the discretion in number 4. I mean, majority of the kids we know that it's going to be appropriate. But
Right.
as Mr. Koshin or Mr. Bartel said, and probably Mr. Castle, there will be someone who tries to push the limit, that it's either interfering with learning or not appropriate for that setting.
so then, guys, does it go along with Mr. Bartels? You've got someone who's got a T-shirt and their message just isn't appropriate. Along that line is what you're saying. Shirts are
Right. Right.
Or shirts are good.
Right, or it's a homemade hat with some kind. I mean, if there's a legitimate reason why they need to wear a hat with a face shield, I mean, by all means, we're going to work with a family. But if
Okay.
it's something that's just made up and it doesn't really serve the purpose, then we need to be able to have the right to say that's not appropriate.
Yes.
It would also
Okay.
be similar if someone has a face mask and there's not an appropriate saying or image on that face mask, we wouldn't allow that to be worn in school. And that's
Okay.
where number 4 looks at there's still some discretion, because we don't want to be disrupting the learning with the image or the message or it goes against what we're trying to teach in school.
So you
Okay.
would add administration has the right to determine the appropriateness of the hat worn and the manner in which they are worn up on number 3 as well. Is that what you're saying?
I
Well,
think that would be, we'd add the language that similar to what Mr. Coach said, and then add that little disclaimer that if it's in an inappropriate face shield, that they have the discretion in which and so forth, that language there. We could add that.
what does anybody else think?
I think number 4 covers it and gives the administrators enough leeway to do what they feel is appropriate when needed.
Well, that just covers facial coverings.
But the only reason why you're wearing the hat is for a facial covering. So
Correct.
if facial covering is part of your hat and it's all in one mechanism, then
Correct.
their discretion, if they should be able to wear it technically, unless the administrator says no.
That it's inappropriate.
Right, that it's not appropriate, right?
The facial coverings in the preparedness and response plan, the example is face mask, face shield. So it defines a face shield and a face mask as a facial covering.
Okay,
So it combines the 2 into 1.
that makes sense.
Anybody else with a comment or a thought?
I agree.
Would it be easier for parents who are trying to determine this just to put under number 4, the appropriate of the facial coverings / protective gear, or something else about the hat there, or just leave it out? Because as a parent, when I think of facial covering, I just think of a mask.
Me too.
I could put after facial coverings, like an
Slash.
example.
slash,
Facial shield.
yes. Then it sums them both up together and we don't have to amend number 3.
So you don't think facial covering and face shield is the same thing?
Not when I initially read facial covering.
Okay.
So if I put after facial covering, parentheses, e.g. or i.e. the face masks and face shields.
That
Yeah,
would
I
be
think that-
perfect.
Yeah, if you
Yeah.
add masks.
Okay.
Okay, so then we can,
Okay.
the approval then today would be with the amendment to number 4 indicating face mask and face shields.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, yep, that's fine.
All right. Moving on, we're looking at on page 48, we're adding some things to the informal and formal offenses and consequences. And number 29 has to do with failure to comply with COVID-19 protocols and procedures. And those would be things like we were just referring to with the inappropriate face masks and or hats, and perhaps any other things that may violate the COVID-19 policies and procedures. Number 30 refers to the filming, recording, or taking screenshots of our teachers and or classmates without permission during the virtual and online instruction. So that would include like limiting, or not limiting, but preventing the recording of the videos that are done by the teachers or screenshots or anything else that may violate number 30. For informal discipline on 48, there's a little piece about the virtual online students, removal from teachers assigned Microsoft Teams class instruction and placed in an alternative setting. So if a student is becoming a discipline issue while they're a virtual student, either on Teams or on camera, we are adding the ability to take them out and put them temporarily in an alternative setting to prevent any classroom disruptions for that teacher.
That's much like we would currently with like an in-school suspension. If there's a student that we suspend, it may be utilizing the alternative room at the high school with Mr. Berg, that maybe for a period of time the person is assigned to that teacher to get their instruction because they've been a disruption in the class. It's just trying to recognize we have students that are online that potentially could cause a disruption in the class, and what's our mechanism for working with those students. Like I said, students that are in person, we'd have an in-school suspension. We have a different room that they might go to. This gives us some flexibility for online. Again, this is a new territory for all of us, so we're just trying to cover all bases in case we have a situation that occurs.
On page 49, it's just again reiterating the fact that if the filming or recording or taking screenshots of the teacher recordings, if it becomes a persistent issue, it may go from an informal to a formal offense, depending on the egregiousness or the amount of times that it becomes an issue. On page 50, talks about number 25, is again, failure to comply with the COVID-19 protocols and procedures, again, can move from an informal to a formal, depending on the nature, the response, or any of the other mitigating factors that may occur with that student not complying with the COVID-19 policies and procedures. On the bottom of page 50, it also refers to virtual/online students removal from the assigned Microsoft Teams class instruction and placed in the alternative setting. And again, that's just like I reiterated earlier, that if there's a student that has a discipline issue, they may be placed in that, for lack of a better word, or lack of a better term, a virtual in-school suspension, so that student is continuing to get their education without disrupting the rest of the class or the students in that class. I believe the next one is on page 64.
So it's 64?
Yes, correct. And that's talking about some attendance issues and the tardy policy of how we will address attendance and expectations for our students that are online students. For the virtual elementary school students, each student is expected to be signed on and visible online throughout the school day. The background visuals and noises should be kept to a minimum. And then on page 65, it's addressing the virtual middle school and high school students. And the expectation for both the middle school and the high school students is the same. And that's that they are expected to be signed in and visible online throughout each hour or class. The students are expected to be signed in and online for each hour or class no later than 10 minutes after the conclusion of the prior class. and the backgrounds and noises should be kept to an absolute minimum. And the reason that we have a traditional passing time, but we added that extra passing time is we anticipate and built in the idea that there may be issues connecting, our students having connectivity issues. There may be issues where some of our older students are having to assist their younger brothers or sisters. So we built in that expectation, that extra added time to try to anticipate that for those students. And I believe that is the end of our changes for the 2021 Student Parent Handbook. Is there anything that I could address or answer for the board?
Just, Ms. Fortuna, are you back in?
I am.
Okay, I'm not sure. I'm not sure when you left us and when you're back. Are you
Oh.
good?
No, I'm good. Yeah, nope, I'm good.
All right.
I do have a follow-up question to how we're going to be restricting the visitors and such. I know the first couple of weeks of school, a lot of parents drop off their school supplies, donations for the teachers. How are we going to be doing that with limiting people coming into the office to do that?
With part of the plan as we talk, we were concerned because we're trying to limit people, whether it's lunch money, dropping off books, or I have the class supplies that the parent was able to provide. We have currently scheduled for 2 at every building, what we're calling COVID-19 building aids. And part of that is that those funds are available to us through December 31st. So we're using them to help with getting the materials at the door, taking the materials, so that we're limiting the people to either at most the vestibule of the building, as well as helping between classes, when kids are walking the hallways, to wipe down and clean up and help sanitize the building with the custodial. So that's where that extra staff is going to help, particularly at the middle school where there's currently not a secure vestibule. There will be someone there who can either work that part of the building, as well as get stuff if parents bring the stuff to the door. This is going to be a challenge for us because we have so many parents that help in our buildings and are there, particularly at the elementary school. But phase 4 indicates that we're not supposed to have unless they're there for essential purposes. So it's going to be a learning curve for families. But I think in the big picture, they will ultimately be supportive because we're trying to protect everybody in the building. But that's part of what those additional staff that we're looking at, and those we are looking at keeping on through at least Thanksgiving, so that we can get through the unknown of what we know and what we don't know, and bringing kids back to school.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you, Mr. Castle.
Thank you.
Moving on, next portion of our meeting is public comment. It's a time when anyone who would like to address the board can do so. You have 3 minutes to speak. While it is not a question and answer session, if you have a question that you would like answered, normally at regular in-person meetings, you would have a chance to write your name and phone number down and someone would get back with you. But if you have a question that needs to be answered,
Oh, hang on, Margaret. Hang on. You gotta unmute yourself, Margaret.
okay.
There you go. Sorry about that. Sorry, trying to.
Okay. So our public comment is the portion of our meeting where if someone would like to address the board, they can do so. You have 3 minutes to speak. While this is not a question and answer period, but if you do have a question that needs to be answered, normally you would leave your name and phone number on a sheet of paper for us. But in this case, if you have a question that needs to be answered, you can email it to me at mtelto@richmond.k12.mi.us and someone will get back with you. Is there anyone who would like to address the board this evening?
I believe anybody who wants to can unmute themselves, is the way it's set up. If there's anybody that is having problems, if you could wave.
Well, I don't see anybody waving. So I think we'll move on. Next, Superintendent Legislative Update, Mr. Walmsley.
Okay. Pull up my notes here. I'm going to start with the update from the district. As I mentioned earlier, last week there was a letter that was mailed home to the families. If for some reason someone did not get that letter, the letter is available on the district website, which I'm going to show you right now. If you click on the COVID-19 Return to Learning, and there is a copy of the letter dated August 17th. In the letter, it talks about the options families have and what they need to do for both in-person and virtual learning. If parents are opting for virtual, there is a form that needs to be signed, and Mr. Castle referenced it in the handbook. The form is also available online. It's an agreement form. It's the expectations for a virtual student. And when they can, we're asking them to commit to 5 weeks. So it shows the commitment time, basically in the progress reports at the end of the quarter for the students and parents. This form is sent to Pam Daly at the board office so that she can make the appropriate changes in PowerSchool to classify them as virtual students. In addition, the letter talks about, just the reminders, it talks about we are not doing Blue Devil Days next week. Instead, that time would be used for distribution of virtual equipment for those families that choose virtual, as well as just a kudos to the board from the perspective of you. In June, you passed another balanced budget, which is a very challenging thing to do in the district, in any district, given the state of situation currently. So, also, the next week, as I mentioned, is for those that are virtual, we will be having technology and school resource pickup nights. High school is scheduled for Monday, August 31st. Middle school is scheduled for Tuesday, September 1st, and elementary scheduled for Wednesday, September 2nd. At this time, we're asking one parent and the student to be there. If there's some case where a parent can't be, or there's multiple students and 2 parents, we'll make adjustments. We're trying to minimize the number of people that are in the building, as well as be able to social distance in the cafeterias where this will be held. We'll be going over not only the equipment, but we'll be making sure parents and students can log into the network, Microsoft Teams, Schoology, to make sure they understand the basic. More of the instruction on Schoology will happen from the classroom teacher the first week. District-wide, we're going to be doing a technology camp. Each building will do it a little differently, whether it's hours or whether it's certain days. But the idea is to teach and show not only in-person, but also, or not only virtual students, but also in-person students, the technology and how it would be utilized if we have to go to phase 3 and we are entirely virtual. So that's our plan. The week of September 14th, that Monday, we are scheduling a virtual Blue Devil Days. Mondays for the high school, Tuesdays for the middle school, and Wednesdays for the elementary school. This will also help because our students will have knowledge now of utilizing Microsoft Teams, both in person and virtual. They'll have a basic understanding of Schoology at that, or Schoology at that time, so we can help parents and utilize that system. So more information about Blue Devil Days will be coming out either in the principal's welcome back letter or in a letter that will come the first week of school. It's exciting to have all the staff will be back officially next Monday. From the teachers, secretaries and principals have already been back, but parapros, food service, district-wide, everybody will be back. So it's exciting to be back and seeing everybody again. I know there's some anxiousness among all staff. I would be remiss if I thought anything else, but with everything we've done, I think we have an outstanding plan to bring in-person back, and it was a result of a lot of people putting their heads together and coming to it. So Um,
Ryan, I have a question.
yes.
I should have asked probably during personnel, but do you think that we'll be getting subs? Do you have subs to cover the teachers that resigned or do you think you'll have some hired by then?
We have, actually, we have the applications that I put out last week, just anticipating any potential new classrooms. We have quite a big file folder that has already come in just over the weekend. So I'll be sharing this with administrators next week so we can start looking through applicants. Probably running through interviews either at the end of next week or the beginning of end of this week or the beginning of the following week. My intention is we will be staffed by the first day of school. If for some reason we're not, every building is getting at least 2 subs that we're locking in through the Thanksgiving. And part of that is because we don't know if we're going to have staff that are sick, staff that get quarantined. If we don't get a job picked up, these subs would be the one able to fill in classrooms where needed. So I'm confident we've done everything to try to lock people in ahead of time. And with the number of applications, I feel by the first day of school, we will have everybody ready to go.
Okay. And preschool starts later, right?
Preschool just starts the Wednesday, August or September 9th. So they're a day after the other, but there are several preschool applications that have come in. So
Okay.
I'll be working with Mr. Koshin and Mrs. Manguni regarding that.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Walmsley,
Yes.
what is our count right now for people choosing virtual?
We were up to 228.
Okay.
I believe was the last I heard that were interested in. Now we got to get those forms back to say they're locking in those counts. So that list of people that were interested, they'll be getting an email from me as a reminder this week with the attached form to fill out. They could bring that form that night of that when they bring their tech. Though if we can get the form ahead of them, we know they're coming so we can get their textbooks and everything for their teachers ahead of time. So that's why we asked them if they could get it in by this Friday, which I believe is the 28th, so that we have a chance to pull textbooks and any resources that teachers might want them to have right from the beginning. So but there'll be an email going out to those 228. Now, some of those have already responded saying, based on what they've read in our plan, they have opted not to do virtual. They would rather stay in person. So we've got those names we've been taking off the list. So that email should go out probably tomorrow to those families.
And
Mr. Walmsley, oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry to cut you off there, Sandra. Do we know if we've gained students through school of choice or retained, maybe brought back some students from that our Richmond students maybe headed elsewhere in the past?
I can tell you that the numbers that are in Power School today and the numbers that were in Power School at the end of last year, we have more students registered in Richmond now than we had in June. What I don't have a sense of is some of those families may have chosen another option and haven't notified us.
Right.
We do have some families that have chosen to homeschool during the pandemic, and they said they're planning on coming back next year, but this year it's just there's so many uncertainties in their eyes. So from a registration in Power School, we have more kids in the registration of Power School now than we did last June.
Okay.
So which was what caused me to at least put the potential postings out there. There are some grade levels, particularly first grade, and Mr. Koshin sent it to me today, so I'm going by memory. I want to say second and third are higher, and so we're looking at those numbers to make sure that are they all actually coming back, or are some of those they're on the list, but they may not be coming back. So. We have gained some families and some students from other districts that have chosen to go 100% virtual. So we've had some increase in enrollment there too, because those families want an in-person option.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mrs. Fortune, I think, did you have?
That was my question.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay.
So that we're moving. I want to thank really the administrative team and secretaries the last week and administrative for the last several weeks. They've really worked hard to get the buildings ready. There's still some things that we're finalizing. The custodial staff and Mr. Reinhardt and the building staff have been putting up the stickers. I was just walking through the middle school, the blue tapes down the hallway to remind students to stay on one side, heading one way. The labels on the doors to, if you have any of these symptoms, please do not come in the building. We can't stress that enough to our community. Err on the side of caution. If you have that fever, do not send your child to school. We've accommodated in the handbook so that these aren't chargeable offenses, if you will, from an attendance perspective. So we're trying to do everything we can to mitigate any spread or exposure. So, today, it was, I spoke in June about the legislators and the governor's office holding a revenue consensus revenue estimating conference. This is unprecedented. They don't typically have one in August. They usually have one in January. And then the second one is around Memorial Day in May. And from that, they estimate what the per pupil allocation is going to be right around the budget season. This year, they decided with everything being affected by the COVID-19 affected the economy with the shutdown and so forth, they decided to have a third consensus revenue estimating conference, which was held today. Based on what was today, officials have revised the general fund budget up from 1.3 billion, up 1.3 billion, and the school aid budget 1 billion in the school aid for total revenues that are up 2.3 billion. It still shows that we have less revenue than we had in January, and it's better than predicted in May, but it's still, there is still a shortfall in revenue compared to what we normally have to make ends meet. But it's not as drastic, I guess, if you will, than what they thought it was going to be. And I think a lot of it had to do with, as they indicated, more people shopping online, gaining the revenue from online sales, businesses from the May to now, many more businesses were allowed to open up, which of course generated more revenue for the state. The next step is the negotiation between the legislature and the governor's office in terms of what that per pupil will be. As of today, we still don't know that amount, but it will be coming, I believe, in the next couple of weeks. They have to approve a budget by September 30th. October 1st is when it officially has to be done by. So they have until 11:59 on the 30th at night. They still, in the restatement released by the Department of Treasury, they are still strongly seeking federal stimulus for schools to help in a CARES Act, which is being discussed, or has been discussed, I should say, at the federal level. There's a little disagreement between the parties on how much it is and in details of it. But there is still a request, really a desperate need, so that we aren't having to withstand a per pupil cut to receive some federal stimulus money.
Brian, just last Monday, the governor signed a few bills that's gonna get us some money. Do you know when that's gonna be paid out?
Well, that's a good question. So, but what the legislators and governor signed was the kind of the agreement to return to school plan. There are some dollars that were put in. I think she announced a $65 million grant to give to schools. That is being calculated on a free and reduced lunch basis. And Tammy, I know you're on here, so if I say anything wrong, because I know you did it. Basically, schools over a 50% mark will be eligible for those funds. Richmond is around 31% free and reduced lunch, so that pot of money, we are not eligible. There is another part of CARES that is being allocated where we qualify for a little over $37,000. It's a formula-based grant. Districts have to apply for it. That dollar value may go up if there are districts that do not apply for the dollars and the pot of money is still there. All of those I'm anticipating. I haven't seen the clarification on what it can be spent on other than broad COVID related. And a lot of times the grants, like for instance, the one that we received in July has to be spent by December 30th. The expenses have to be incurred by that. So anything that's out there that we are eligible for, we are applying. And like I said, that 37, we will be applying. I think the deadline for that is September 30th that we have to apply. And so the release of those funds would be somewhere in October.
One of them was one that was offering hazard pay to teachers or staff. Is that one that we're eligible for or not eligible for?
From my understanding, again, there's some of these that they passed, but they haven't released the clarification document. In the FY20 budget, which would have been the 1920, there was I don't remember the exact dollar amount, but there was a hazard pay for teachers.
$500.
I don't believe it was for other staff. In that passing of that, there was comments that made that if we're going to continue this in the future for future budget, that other school employees would be considered in that budget. Tammy, have you received anything or received any guidance on that one?
No.
No, okay.
That was just for teachers and it was $500.
And so we are eligible for that one or not?
The state, my understanding is the state is handling that money doesn't come through us. It is going from the state to employees.
Right.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if the district was handling it. Okay.
Not at this point.
But does the district have to qualify in order for our teachers, or is it just for all teachers?
My understanding and what I've read is that all teachers are qualified, and the state will pull that information probably from ORS, where they pull a lot of what positions people have and so forth. ORS being the Office of Retirement Services. So
okay,
that would be a little different. It won't surprise me if the state turns around and says, okay, you have X number of teachers, we're going to send you a check and you issue the check to the teacher or so forth. Because they did that with the 3% overpayment, they put that on the districts to distribute that. But right now, from what we know, it's coming from the state, not the district.
Okay.
But again, it wouldn't surprise me if we end up having to distribute the dollars.
Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions you may have? I'll just finish with this. I can't thank everybody enough, not only from the board, all the way down to every employee here. It has overwhelmingly been very positive in terms of coming back to school. I don't think there's a staff member that doesn't have any reservations about themselves, and there's some concern. But I believe in the best interest of kids and what we've done and put in place in terms of our best effort to try to protect not only our students, but our staff, and putting some of the precautions in place, the cleaning and so forth. From what I've seen, Richmond has done this process very differently than other districts, and we should be proud of the way we did it as a collective group, because we have a lot of support. We have a lot of people behind it, from each of the leaderships, teams of the unions to the individual staff. This has truly been a team effort to open school. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Next, items of interest from members of the board. Does anybody have anything?
I had a chance to attend a National Association of School Boards training this week. It was called Jurassic Parliamentarian. And while it might not seem very interesting or enthralling to other people, I find it very interesting. And it really covered some of the new changes to the National Association of Parliamentarians, and that there's a 12th edition of Robert's Rules of Order coming out. And so I will be reviewing that when it comes out as well. And it was just very insightful to learn that we're doing our meetings very well and on standard. and that some of the practices that we have in place, other districts did not have in place. And so I was very proud of what we're doing as a board. I did make just a couple suggestions to our board president that she's already done. So I'm thankful for that. And I think that I would recommend training through the National Association of School Boards anytime that you can take one. They're offered usually through the Michigan Association of School Boards email that we get. So that's all I have.
And Brian, don't districts get copies, Open Meetings Act, Robert's Rules of Order for board members? Isn't that something?
We don't automatically get it. We've ordered them in the past for some board members that have asked them, and I'd be more than happy if it comes out to order copies for the board. As far as the Open Meetings Act, we typically pull off what the State Attorney General for the state of Michigan publishes. Oh my goodness, I'm drawing a blank on the previous State Attorney General, Bill Schuette, I think is the last one that's out there. I don't think they've updated it with the new State Attorney General.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Anybody else?
I would just like to reiterate what Brian said. You know, I have friends that are teachers in Anchor Bay and friends who are parents of kids at Chippewa in places that don't have an option of going in person, and they are not happy. So I would just like to thank again everyone in our organization that worked through their summer to come up with a 117-page plan to make it safe, or as safe as it can be, for our kids to be where they belong. So again, thank you to everyone. Also, I would like to say how disappointing it is that we are not having a football season this fall, given that kids are allowed and districts are allowed to figure out what they want to do. We're going to tell them that they can't have football, and that's going to get moved. The best thing they could do in 5 months, the best plan they could come up with, was to move it to a season that's already been affected by everything that's going on. That is very disappointing. So as with always, when you look at leaders, make sure you know what you're getting.
Yep. And Kyle, you're right. I don't think there's any of us sitting at the table that can say enough about our plan. Like you, I have friends that teach in other districts, and they weren't even able to be a part of their plan, not have any kind of say. They heard about their plan when their board was presented with the plan and approved, and it just, we have done an amazing job, and fingers crossed and all of that kind of stuff, and hoping that everyone stays safe as we do it. But we are very fortunate from top to bottom in the plan that we put together. We can't say it enough. Okay, we're going to move on to our action items. The approval of the 2020-2021 Student Parent Handbook. We just had the presentation by Mr. Castle. There's a sample resolution with the amendment to number 4 on page 44.
Motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and approve the proposed changes to the 2020-2021 Student Parent Handbook as presented in the attached documentation.
With the amendment?
With the amendment of number 4 on page 44.
Support.
Jessica, was that you?
Yes.
It's been moved and supported. Any discussion? Anyone? Okay, other than to thank you to our administrators who worked on this and Mr. Castle for his presentation. All those in favor, aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Next, approval of math expressions workbooks and digital access. Mr.
A
Wong,
motion to, oh, sorry.
This is
I think he just wants to say a little something first, Jessica.
Okay.
Yeah, these are the math resources that we use in the elementary school, kindergarten through 3rd grade. Typically in the past, we over the course of a year spend about 11 to 13 based on enrollment, as we had to hire and or had to buy new stuff and so forth. This year costs have gone up, and the cost proposal is
Mr. Walmsley, I'm sorry, can I interrupt you? Miss Fortuna got knocked off, so can we just hold the phone? Kyle, if you'd like to play some music. She's trying to log back in. Kyle, no background music?
I disconnected her, Church.
Oh, okay,
It's
all right.
gone.
Okay. And this is why in the handbook, they're giving students that extra 10 minutes to get to class so that when they have technical difficulties, they can log back in.
Or call the help desk.
Call the help desk.
To be able to remote in and try to assist what's going on.
That help desk is going to be really busy.
Yeah, they're going to get to know people real well. Thank you, Eric. She is trying, folks. Oh,
I see her.
I see her too.
She's just on mute. There we go.
Sorry. All right. No, welcome back. We missed you. Did you, Brian started talking. Did you hear any of that or should he start over?
I did not hear Brian talk.
I'll start over because I don't remember where I finished off.
I don't either, so okay.
Basically, these are the math curriculum materials we use in kindergarten through third grade at the elementary school. The cost of them has gone up, so it's now over $10,000. So what we would be buying would be the workbooks and the digital access for staff members too, to be able to access the math expressions, math curriculum resources.
Okay, there's a sample resolution, Jessica.
A motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and approve the purchase of math expressions, student workbooks, and digital access for teachers from Houghton Mifflin Harcourt in an amount not to exceed $13,676.50 as outlined in the attached documentation.
Support.
Okay, it is moved and supported. Any discussion, any questions, anybody?
So is this just for digital access?
No, there's a paper workbook for kindergarten through third grade, correct, Mr. Koshin? I don't need to. Yes, he's shaking his head, yes. So it is also the paper copy.
Yeah, it says in this thing, it says consumable student workbooks and online digital access for teachers.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, I'll do a roll call. Jessica.
Aye.
Sandy.
Aye.
Jerry.
Aye.
Kyle.
Aye.
Chris.
Aye.
Angela.
Aye.
I vote aye. Motion carries. Next, approval of laptop purchase from C-High Computer Products, Inc. Mr. Walmsley.
Okay, when we went through the budget cycle, we did not plan on purchasing laptop. There is some in the bond, but it's to come out of the third series, or actually the second series, because we sold series 1 and 2 together, which wouldn't be until another probably year before we sell that series. The plan was to utilize the funds that were received for the in July on the state aid payment regarding the COVID-19. If you recall, we received a $175 per pupil cut in our general dollars that we use, but we received a $350 increase in our CARES money, which has to be used for COVID related. So with that, the thought was we could utilize some of that for computers, because many of our computers, they're at 5 years and they're starting to be beyond. It's costing more to repair them than just to purchase a new one. If you recall, the plan was, when we did this, I was using I had applied for a grant through the Macomb County Executive's Office for a camera system. And I had not heard anything from that. So we actually did end up receiving that grant totaling $100,000. So using the camera system could be utilized in the money we received from the state through the CARES money, and utilizing the dollars, either pot of money, I guess, if you will, would be buying the $100,000 worth of laptops. That will get us 3 grade levels of laptops. Last year, the board purchased, I believe it was last August, if memory serves me correctly, we replaced 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, 4 grade levels worth of laptops. This would be purchasing the same laptop, just the newer model, because the new one's already out, but it would allow us to do 3 grade levels of laptop. All of these fall under the qualifications of it's CARES related. We will be ready now if we have to go virtually. We will have better equipment if we have to go virtually with everybody with these laptops. It typically takes anywhere from 6 to 10 weeks to get the laptops in, because districts have ordered thousands of laptops, and so there is a back order to get laptops in. So the request before you is for the laptops. The dollar value for the cases and the protective falls under the $10,000, which is required to come to the board. We will still get those cases and protective bags like we did with the current 5th through 8th grade. It doesn't need to come to the board for that approval. So I'm requesting that we purchase the laptops. Basically, it's 300 laptops, almost 3 full grade levels. So.
Have you decided which grade levels?
We were looking at the 4th, 3rd, and 2nd grade. Now, typically we don't give 2nd grade laptops. They keep them in school, but we would take the 2nd grade tablets that they have and move them down to the 1st and kindergarten, because they're already used to. So if we had to go virtual, we would have them take those units home for the virtual. High school, we'd be looking at, a lot of our students are starting to bring their own devices in at the high school, which we've been encouraging. Mr. Lamont was able to figure out this summer the printing issues to allow families to be able to print from their own device to either our computer or their home computers at home. So, or using our program, our computers at home. So right now we're looking at 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade.
There's
very durable. They are having a first year with the middle school. The kids drop them. That's normal. We expect that because the kids are kids. And so, but these devices are very durable, solid devices, especially the cases on them.
Okay, there's a sample resolution.
I motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and approve the purchase of 300 laptops from C-High Computer Products, Inc. for a total not to exceed $101,076 plus 10% increased enrollment needs allowable under the CARES Act funding received from the state in July 2020 and authorized in the FY 2021 general fund as outlined in the attached documentation.
Support.
I didn't catch the support on that one. So.
It was Kyle.
It was Chris.
Kyle got her.
I think Kyle's voice was louder than Chris's, so I'm going with Kyle.
A little bit more muted.
This is
Okay, it's been moved and supported. Is there any discussion or questions?
I have a question. What are we doing with the old laptops? Are we going to be able to recycle those for any return on investment, or is there going to be a cost to recycle them?
What we've done with the previous is Eric and Harold and Keith have removed parts that are typically broken, like screens, keys, and so forth, that they can, I want to say, pillage on the laptops that are beyond repair. And those we would have to recycle because there's no value to selling them. The ones that we are still good, we keep and are offered to students, because we have some cases where we may have a situation where students have to have a laptop at home and at school for that it may be an IEP. At the high school level, we might have kids that forgot them, and we have enough now, but as they're breaking, we're replacing them with the ones that are still working. So the next purchase would be focusing on the high school level. So we take the parts that we can, so it doesn't cost us for parts, it just costs us for our IT people to replace them and fix them. And a lot of that's been done in-house now. We don't send out as many for repairs because they can do it in-house now that they have parts. We will have a surplus of bags, so we will have to dispose of them. More than likely, it will be we have to sell them or dispose them by board policy or equipment, but we will have a surplus of bags.
Anyone else? Okay, it has been moved and supported. I'll do a roll call vote. Jessica,
Aye.
Kyle,
Aye.
Angela,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Sherry,
Aye.
Sandy,
Aye.
and I vote aye. Motion carries. Next item is closed session. Looking for a motion to go into closed session for the purposes of negotiations pursuant to Section 8C of the Michigan Open Meetings Act.
Pursuant to the Section 8C of Michigan Open Meetings Act, I move that the Board of Education go into closed session for the purpose of negotiations.
Support.
Been moved and supported. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. We are going into closed session, and for those in our viewing audience, when we come back, we will not be voting on anything. We will just be adjourning the meeting. So we are going to go into closed session right now.